Hi everybody, it's Bryan Strawser, Principal and Chief Executive here at Bryghtpath, and in this presentation, I'm going to walk you through our thoughts on how to wield influence as a resilience leader. This came from our white paper, The Strategic Edge, Wielding Influence as a Resilience Leader, and you can read more about these concepts in the white paper and get all of this information with even more detail than what you're going to find here in the presentation. By way of background, I'm CEO of Bryghtpath, a company I founded in 2014. Here at Bryghtpath, we work with the world's leading brands to strategically manage uncertainty and disruption. We're experts in business continuity, crisis management, and IT disaster recovery, all of which we believe are part of what makes up a resilient organization. By way of my background, I have more than 25 years of experience in these practice domains. I've led the development of dozens of similar programs in Fortune 500 organizations and nonprofits, and I hold multiple professional certifications in business continuity, crisis management, and information security. I have an MBA from the University of Minnesota's Carlson School, a master's from King's College London, and I'm currently a doctoral student at Hamline University. So I say all that to help kind of set the stage for, I've wielded influence in the C-suite in Fortune 500, even Fortune 30 and 20 sized organizations for more than 25 years. And what you're going to hear here is really the output of what I have learned that has been effective for me and for our clients over the last 11 years here at Bryghtpath. Now, I'll start with this quote from McKinsey & Company, one of our competitors in consulting, because I thought it was prescient. McKinsey said in a report just towards the end of the COVID-19 pandemic that coming out of that pandemic, that there's never been a greater concern to the C-suite than the next major disruption that is on the horizon. And that they were ready, in my mind, for resilience leaders to be ready to step forward and lead on a broader stage. But what we saw during COVID as a consulting firm is that the leader that was responsible for COVID wasn't actually leading, the leader responsible for resilience wasn't actually leading the overall organizational effort around COVID. That often companies were turning to a senior executive that had more experience leading organizational initiatives. And in some organizations, business continuity was simply not involved beyond tactical work supporting this overall strategic initiative. In fact, we have organizations we've worked with since COVID that the business continuity and crisis management leaders weren't even in the room when the major COVID policy and response and recovery decisions were being made. And that really made me wonder what was going on with resilience leaders and their ability to wield influence in the C-suite. Well, we think that strategic misalignment is really at the core of this challenge, and it has two principal pillars here. First, that resilience leaders as a whole don't understand strategy. And I mean strategy at a corporate level, at an organizational or enterprise level. Because business continuity is highly process focused, right? We execute a life cycle, we do the BIA, we update the plan, we conduct an exercise, we capture lessons learned, and we report on program performance. But your organization has developed an overarching strategy for the company. And we fail to connect our efforts to that strategy. We fail to help people understand how resilience fits into what they are trying to do. Also, we think that resilience leaders are often focused on areas that are just not perceived to be important. We have overly complex, little understood processes that we oversee. There's not a lot of perceived value in the work that is required to make a program successful. And there's a lack of support from us and a lack of involvement from resilience leaders in strategic initiatives. So why is that? And where can you help improve that lack of strategic alignment? So we think we need to strategically reframe how we think about resilience in an organization. So let me draw some very direct comparisons. In the old view, the one that got us into this situation, people perceive resilience and we present resilience as a compliance requirement. But the reframing is that resilience is a competitive advantage for your organization. The old way of thinking is that resilience is about responding to a crisis. The new way of thinking is that resilience represents foresight and adaptability and decision support. The old view is that your team gets called when something goes wrong. The new view should be we engage them to help us plan what is next. The old view is risk is something to avoid. I don't want to do those things. They're too risky. The reframing is that risk is something we navigate and learn from, and that sometimes we take on the risk in order to achieve our strategic objectives. The old view is that we avoid the hard lessons learned. The new view is we seize the opportunity to evolve and try to make new original mistakes in the next crisis. The old view is that resilience is siloed in one department. The new view is resilience is a team effort that is integrated across the organization. The old view is that resilience is reactive and episodic, right? We're doing this only when something happens. The new view, the reframing, should be that resilience is proactive and continuous. The old view, and I have seen this even in the last few weeks, that exercises are a check-the-box activity. The new view should be that exercises are strategic, intentional learning opportunities and where we can mature as an organization. And lastly, the old view is that plans are static documents. I do this because I have to, because of compliance, and when it's done, I don't think about it again. The reframing is that plans are evolving tools that help us drive foresight and accept risk. So the old way, in my mind, of thinking about our role as resilience leaders and the strategic reframing of the direction that we want to go. As resilience leaders, you are not just managing plans. You are shaping how the organization thinks, acts, and prepares for what is next. You're enabling the organization to take on those challenges. So in our work with resilience leaders across multiple industries in the past decade, we have found that the most influential resilience leaders, the ones who have pull and influence in the C-suite and with the board, focus their energy in 3 areas. And these priorities help them shape how resilience is viewed in the organization. And that is viewed not as a cost center there, but as a leadership function. And these priorities also determine whether or not the resilience leader is invited into key conversations or just left reacting to decisions that have been made without them. The first priority is strategic alignment. It is about making resilience relevant to the business agenda. That when resilience leaders connect their work to outcomes that matter, they stop being the person who just has the plan and they start being the person who enables progress. The second priority is executive presence, and I don't mean how you're dressed, although that can be a component here. But this is about being heard, being trusted, and being invited back. And so presence is about how you show up, especially in high-stakes conversations. If you're always composed and thoughtful and direct, people remember that, and people want that. They listen when you speak, and they bring you into the room when it counts. And then lastly, it's about game-changing relationships. It is about building networks inside and outside of your company that multiply your impact. Resilience leaders with the broadest networks respond faster, recover better, and influence decisions that other folks never even see. And that is not a coincidence. It's the result of deliberate relationship building over time. So we're going to dive into all 3 of these as a core part of what we're doing today. The first priority is strategic alignment. Roger Martin, one of my favorite business writers, the former dean of the Rotman School of Business in Toronto, said a long time ago that the 2 most fundamental choices for a company are where to play and how to win. So what are you focusing on, and how do you be the best? How do you win at doing that thing? So you want to be perceived as a team and as a leader that is enabling the organization's strategy. You want to make sure that your programs are linked to business objectives. You want to use shared risk language, and you want to focus on outcomes. What are you trying to accomplish? Not, I need to do this BIA today. So what are we trying to get to? So key actions here. Your company has some kind of strategic plan. What's in it? What are the top priorities? What are the growth markets or growth products? What are the major capital and technology projects going on? What is the role for resilience in these areas? Ask leaders as you meet with them, what could derail this plan? And then start to frame your solutions around what that answer is. You should work on translating your program's goals to business outcomes. That might be revenue continuity, regulatory confidence, customer trust, or just getting the business reopened more quickly after a disruption. And then you want to partner with key teams early who know what's going on and can help you understand where things are headed. You might have a strategy team or an enterprise risk management team. You undoubtedly have an information security team. They're usually well-funded, know what's going on. You may have a transformation and change organization. But these are key focus areas. These are key teams to build relationships with so you understand what's happening. We'll talk more about that in a bit. Priority 2 is about executive presence. This is about being heard, being trusted, and being invited back after that first encounter. A lot of folks translate executive presence to being about how you dress, and that is a very small component of this, right? You need to dress to the level at which you want to be perceived. There is truth to that. But this is more about communication and consistency. It is about being able to communicate with clarity and purpose. It is about distilling the key messages down to something that is simple, which is why we say simplify in all caps. Make it simple to understand and let them ask questions. You want to lead with strategic insight in your conversation, not a status update. They can read. You probably have some kind of reporting that you publish. They don't need to hear that. You want to lead with insight. How do you make this important? And then you build trust by doing this consistently. Again, it's about thinking strategically. So I'll give you an example. In 2009, I was employed by a Fortune 30 company. I was up for a promotion. This promotion would have seen me overseeing business continuity, crisis management, 2 global security operations centers, and an intelligence team. So pretty good chunk of folks. It would be a direct report to the chief security officer. So my final interview is with the CEO. And we knew each other. I had been involved in a pretty high stakes project earlier that year and had near daily interaction for about 90 days. But then I went off and went to another job, right, within the company. So I'm up for the promotion. We kind of know each other. I walk in the room. This is a newly created position, by the way. Big CEO office. We're in the kind of couch, chair, casual seating area. And he's got a coffee table here with some newspaper spread on it. This will be relevant in a moment. Once we get through the normal, kind of stuff at the beginning of the interview, he just looks at me and goes, "Why do I need to have this job? Why? I don't understand it. Why do we need to have this position? What will you be doing? Help me understand, what we're doing here." Because he's like, I feel pretty good about risk and where we're at. And I just pointed at the Wall Street Journal on his coffee table and said, "Did you read the Wall Street Journal this morning?" He goes, "Yes." "You read the article about the labor strikes at ports in China?" "Yes." "Did you know our principal competitor has a side agreement that exempts them from being impacted by the strikes, which means that their product will flow and ours will sit on the dock?" "No, I didn't know that." I said, "Well, that's why you need a leader overseeing this capability, is to make sure that our competitors are not more resilient than we are through one of the largest port systems in the world." And then we kind of proceeded to the interview from there. So what I did there is, 1, I didn't take his bait. 2, I communicated with clarity and purpose. And I communicated very simply. And I led with insights, not status. I didn't talk about, we have 40 business continuity plans or whatever. I didn't give a shit. I went to the strategic answer, and that's what we need to do in these conversations. And then you can get to the tactical information if that becomes necessary. So some key actions here that you can do to improve your executive presence is practice summarizing your message in 90 seconds or less. Get to the so what as quickly as you can. Second, use language that matches your audience. Get rid of the jargon. Speak in outcomes and options and strategic insight. Third is anticipate questions that you're going to receive from leadership and prepare answers for those in advance. Fourth is practice delivering those insights in executive settings, whether you're doing it, in a mirror, whether you record yourself and watch it later. That's always super painful, but teaches you a lot. Do it with a trusted partner that can give you feedback. And then be visible outside of just major disruptions and crises. Show up regularly and add value every time that you're there so that you're adding value before you're actually needed. If you want to practice this, find a partner that you trust. and take a simple question like, pretend I'm the new head of IT infrastructure in your organization. Can you briefly explain your business continuity program to me? And then have your partner give you feedback on the conciseness of what you did, the simplicity, and the explanation of your program's value. One question that we do similar to this all the time when we're doing program evaluations is we're asking leaders of resilience functions, pretend I'm the new CIO, pretend I'm the new CEO. You have 90 seconds in the elevator. Explain the program to me. That is a critical skill that you will want to continue to hone over time. Sometimes simple graphics help you tell a story. This is an example of one that I've used a few times with executive teams. The purpose here is to talk about the fact that, disruptions evolve over time. There's a life cycle to this thing that you're dealing with. And so you see the level of impact gets worse over time. And you can put all kinds of mitigation strategies in place. That's kind of the yellow pressing down on the arrow. There's an inflection point where your mitigation efforts will always fail. Always. The question is how far down the time frame before that mitigation effort fails can you get? And that is a good way of explaining the more that we can mitigate, the further off we can push that failure point. And we can reduce the severity of the impact, and we can avoid that critical issue in a lot of cases as long as we've pushed that inflection point down the road as far as we can. Another way of explaining this is a simple way of explaining metrics. I'm communicating value. This is an actual graphic that I used back in the day. It's been shared publicly, so I'm not disclosing anything confidential here. But the Retail Industry Leaders Association put this graphic together based on the reopening rates of stores impacted by Hurricane Sandy. So you can see one retailer was way ahead of everyone else. You can see another retailer kind of ahead of the crowd. And then you kind of see the rest of the crowd kind of bundled there between the gold and the two different shades of gray line. Using this graphic was a simple way of showing how investments in preparedness and resilience had paid off because we reopened more quickly than our competitors. And then we could use this data to estimate what was the delta, the increase in sales that we gained by doing so. Priority 3 is game-changing relationships. And this is about building a network that multiplies your impact. Because resilience is a team sport. Influence comes from your ability to cut across silos, connect people, and drive coordinated actions. The more connected that you are, the faster you can act, and the more likely others are to help support your work. So some key actions that you can take here are to use a relationship map to identify gaps and high impact connections. And we're going to talk about this in a moment. You can prioritize conversations with influence accelerators and connectors. These are these key leaders in some different groupings that we're going to talk about that can help multiply your impact. You can schedule recurring low pressure check-ins, not just when you need something. So it's not just transactional. You can add value to other people's goals, can help them solve problems through this resilience lens that you possess. And you can also think about with third parties, key third parties and outside stakeholders, how can you treat them like internal partners and invest in their understanding? How can you invest in understanding their needs and earning trust? And here, a lot of cases, I'm talking about public safety agencies at the state, local, and federal level that you want to have closer relationships with, that where you can both benefit each other. Now here at Bryghtpath, we've developed our own, what we refer to as the game-changing relationships model. And this be a little different based on how your organization is set up. But really we have 3 tiers here that kind of move concurrently with each other. The first tier, you see the resilience leader here to the left. Look at the table stakes relationships you have to have. The ones that are closest to you are your chief information security officer, your chief security officer, if you have one that oversees physical or global security or corporate security, the leader of your DR function, which could be you, your audit leader, and your crisis leader, which also could be you. But these are the relationships that you have to have. The second tier here are value-based relationships, value relationships. And these are the leaders for your ERM, compliance, and communications functions. It's your peers at other organizations. It's your chief HR officer. It's your CIO and your CFO. That is that next layer of influence and relationships that you want to have. And then where we truly see resilience leaders differentiating themselves is on this final tier here on the outside. That is the CEO, your board's audit and risk committee, leaders of business units, public sector partners, key third-party stakeholders, and other executives in your organization. Now, again, these may differ a bit based on your organizational structure and the industry that you're in, but this is generally how we think about these relationships. So let's dive in. That tier 1 relationship, these are table stakes. This is your operational foundation. They're the people that help you execute on your program. They're embedded in your daily work. They form the foundation for continuity, response, and recovery, and you can't do your job without them. But alone, they're not enough to drive broader influence. Your objective here is to build consistent, high-trust collaboration and ensure that you have alignment in plans, messaging, and response execution. The second tier are about relationships that expand impact or value. These are partners that help in your organization shape how resilience is understood, adopted, and embedded in the fabric of your business. They help you connect your work to broader enterprise priorities, and they increase the risk of your messaging and your influence. We have industry peers here because this is a place where you can learn a lot from what other people are doing, particularly within your industry, because it helps answer the question that you will get from the C-suite, which is, what is company X doing that we're not doing in the resilience space? Or what are other companies doing is a general question I would get, and then be able to answer that. Your goals here are to align priorities, collaborate across planning efforts, and then leverage their credibility to amplify your credibility. The third tier is about differentiation. This really sets you apart, and this is strategic influence and visibility. These are the people who shape enterprise direction. Their trust and support can elevate your program, unlock resources for you, and embed resilience into strategic initiatives. In most cases, these folks are not going to come to you. You need to influence them intentionally, speak their language, and make sure that you show up with insight. Your goal here is to elevate the role of resilience as a business enabler, gain visibility, provide strategic counsel, and become a part of that leadership dialogue that is happening at that level. So you can use this model to audit your current relationships. Where are you strongest? Where are you weakest? What are your gaps? Then I would ask that you identify one person in each tier where you want to deepen engagement. For each of those, come up with one specific action this quarter, like set a recurring check-in, share a risk insight, collaborate together on a project, and then revisit this map quarterly as your program and your influence evolves. Having influence will require likely a shift in how you focus your time. These are where we see high-impact resilience leaders spending time. Strategy and business alignment, joining long-range planning efforts and transformation programs, understanding business growth strategies and aligning the resilience work accordingly, and using scenarios to challenge assumptions and test your resilience posture early. The second is executive engagement and communication, preparing regularly for C-suite and board-level conversations, speaking in outcomes and business impact, not acronyms or technical jargon, and becoming a trusted advisor by showing you understand the whole business, not just risk. On the right, it's stakeholder relationship building, dedicating time each week to relationship maintenance, particularly with that tier 2 value and tier 3 differentiator stakeholders from our model, supporting their goals and making resilience relevant to their work, and then building coalitions in and outside of your company that can carry your message and scale your impact. The fourth is risk intelligence and foresight. Part of this is spending time and blocking time for reading, learning, and thinking. And yes, I mean thinking. Today is Wednesday. I have a minimal number of meetings today. I'm going to spend a good chunk of today learning and thinking about some things that are on my mind about the future of my company. You should do something similar. You can use horizon scanning and scenario planning to frame your work in a more future-focused way. And you can translate that foresight into clear implications for the organization's priorities and then build them into your strategy. And then lastly, delegation and capability building. You can empower your team to handle day-to-day activities. You can coach others to take ownership of plans and exercises and functional elements. And you can focus on building a culture of distributed resilience, not bottlenecked execution. So again, when it comes to influence, this is not something that happens just by accident. It happens on purpose. So you need to redefine, I guess there's a 5-step process I meant. You should redefine how you think about your role. So start by spending some time reflecting. How am I currently perceived? What do senior leaders think my role is and isn't? Do I feel like I'm shaping the business conversations I'm in, or am I just reacting? And then think about, well, what would it look like to me if I treated myself as a strategic leader? The second is to audit and prioritize your relationships using our game-changing relationships model as a diagnostic. So again, plot where you have strong, moderate, or missing relationships. Choose one stakeholder to engage more intentionally and define some specific goals to chase. Third is to level up your executive presence. The practical steps here: build your messaging in business terms. Don't lead with jargon. Anticipate executive concerns and be prepared to answer. Simplify your story and ensure you have a narrative, and practice speaking in headlines. Can you make your point in 60 seconds? Well, can you do it in 30 seconds? And be prepared to provide detail if you're asked. Fourth is reclaim your time to reflect on your strategy. Time to us is the clearest expression of what is important to you. And too often resilience leaders let their time get bogged down in low leverage tasks. You want to shift this by reviewing your calendar for low leverage activities and ensure you're allocating at least 20% of your week to high value work, and then just build on that over time. And then lastly, track your progress and learn and adjust. Influence is not always going to come with instant feedback. So look for invitations to strategic conversations that you weren't involved in before. Look for leaders using your language in meetings or decisions. Look for budget decisions that reflect your recommendations, and watch for colleagues who champion your work without being asked to do so, and you will begin to understand how your resilience has evolved. I will tell you over and over that your executives are looking to be led on matters of resilience, and we need to step up as resilience leaders. If you want to learn more about these concepts, there's a couple places to go. First, we have free 101 entry-level courses on our website at bryghtpath.com. Second, I talk about these topics every week in our podcast, Managing Uncertainty. You can get it with any podcast app or service that's out there, and it's also available on the Bryghtpath channel on YouTube. And then lastly, I think the best book about leading in a crisis, and it has a lot to do with influence, is from the staff of the Harvard National Preparedness Leadership Initiative: Lenny Marcus, Eric McNulty, Joe Henderson, and Barry Dorn. That book is Your It: Crisis Change and How to Lead When It Matters Most. I think you'll really enjoy the book and have some great takeaways along the lines of what we've talked about here. You can get a copy of this presentation on our website at bryghtpath.com/influence, and we'll get that out to you right away. No Q&A, of course, because we're online, but we do attempt to reply to comments, so you can leave questions there. That is it for our presentation on wielding influence as a resilience leader, the strategic edge. I hope you found this valuable. If there's ever anything I can do to help you, drop me a note at brian.strawser@bryghtpath.com, or you can give me a call at 612-235-6435, extension 1. Thanks for your time today. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.